Welcome, everybody. It's amazing to have you all here at Film and the Green Deal. I'll thank Creative Europe Media for hosting this event today. We're going to explore what can we do to make the world a little bit better. And we have a fantastic moderator today, Beadie Finzi from Doc Society. And without further ado, I would like to give the word to you.
Thank you so much to all the Media That Matters team. You are amazing. Your festival is amazing, and we salute you. Everyone who is here today, you are in the right place at the right time. I would argue this is the most important conversation that you could be having. And I just want to first of all start by celebrating this extraordinary panel we've got. We've got some of the smartest thinkers and doers from our industry. And I'd like to invite everyone one at a time just to give a quick intro so we can say hello to our audience and then get stuck into the conversation. Kristýna, would you like to go first?
Oh, of course. Hello, and thank you for having me here at this panel. And my name is Kristýna, and I work at the One World Festival from Prague. And I'm a programmer and also for 3 years a production manager. So I have a very hands-on approach to eco-friendly production.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Lise.
Hello, I'm Lise Lense-Møller. I'm a producer in Denmark, specialized in creative documentaries. I also have a little publishing company. And then I'm also head of studies for EAV Producers Workshop, one of the longest running training programs for producers and other industry professionals in Europe.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. And continuing in the tradition of ladies first, Maria, please.
Maria Silvia Gat, I'm so happy to be with you today. I work at the Creative Europe Media Program. I'm based in Brussels, and I am dealing with the overall overview of the implementation of the media program. And since this year, with a particular eye on the strategic matter of greening the industry. So I feel that I'm really lucky to meet you all. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for being with us. Can I cross to Bassam, please?
Hello, thank you. My name is Bassam. I'm a co-founder of Greener Screen. Also, I'm a producer working with films. Our goal in Greener Screen to help the industry in the Middle East to become a net zero industry and hopefully to become positive industry toward the environment, hopefully in the next 10 years.
Fantastic. Fantastic. We applaud your ambition. And Jeroen.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. Wonderful to be a part of this panel. My name is Jeroen van der Zalm. I am a policy advisor at the Netherlands Film Fund. And amongst others, responsible for developing the strategic agenda on sustainable filming.
Fantastic. So you can see what I mean. We have everything we need in one room to have this critical conversation. We have makers, we have strategists, we have curators, everything is here. So let's begin with our central question, our central challenge. At Doc Society, I imagine, as everyone who's dialing in right now believes, we believe in the role of cultural strategy to help drive social progress. We believe storytellers play a crucial role in framing how our societies understand both the crises of our time and their solutions, that storytelling is how we create shared meaning. But coming from a community of creatives, I think we have to admit that we have struggled to get a handle on our greatest existential challenge, and that is climate change. The Indian writer Amitav Ghosh wrote this: "When future generations look back, they will certainly blame the leaders and politicians of this time for their failure to address the climate crisis, but they may well hold the artists and writers to be equally culpable. For the imagining of possibilities is not, after all, the job of politicians and bureaucrats." So this is my central challenge to you all. When you look at some of the most popular climate stories of the past 2 decades, you begin to realize how monotonous they are, relying on kind of tired narrative arcs of fear, 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 hope, relying on trusted messengers who are primarily white, middle-aged men from the global north telling everyone else how to live. we keep serving the same population again and again with the same narratives about the climate while alienating or ignoring the rest of our audiences. Another significant tendency in media is to fetishize the pristine natural world. We remove the human or the human cost from the picture. And this nature pornography is incredibly successful. And it allows us to turn our face from the real story. And it gives the broadcasters an excuse to say, well, we do put the natural world on television and look how popular it is. Whereas these depressing climate narratives, they don't rate. So the real conversation just disappears from our screens. If you want to encapsulate this, let me just show you what's going on in the UK. There was a report that came out in 2009 by BAFTA called Subtitles to Save the World. By analysing subtitles across all the shows broadcast in the UK in 2019, they found that climate change was mentioned 13,000 times. And you might say to me, Beadie, what's your problem? This sounds like a great figure. Well, this compares to Brexit, which was mentioned 134,000 times, dog, which was mentioned 131,000 times, and cake, which was mentioned 72,000 times. And I know I think we can probably all agree the British have some issues, but I can't believe they are alone in simply not putting climate on screen, and it's not good enough. Our industry has an unprecedented role to play in the next decade, changing culture and accelerating progress towards a climate-just future. And that means as creatives, we need to think a lot more creatively about the stories we tell, where climate themes are explicit, as well as when they're incidental or delicate. We need to be a lot more conscious about who is represented on screen and therefore the audiences we're engaging. As funders, we need to think about how climate and sustainability can show up on screen in every format, from news to docs to soap operas to game shows, all the time. And as commissioners and festival creators, we need to get bolder about programming. You know, I would suggest it's time to put climate at the center all the time, every time. And I want to salute movies that matter for their commitment to this issue. And also right now, our colleagues over at CPH Docs, who've also got some astonishing climate-centered programming going on. The good news is the public wants it. The Yale report published this week, which surveyed 30 countries, showed overwhelming support for the Paris Agreement, that large majorities in each country and territory say climate change should be a high or very high priority for their own government. So for goodness sake, let's mirror that in the media. What are we waiting for? So let's begin this conversation where it should begin, in story, in creativity, because everything begins with great storytelling. And without that, there will be no change. Lisa, please kick us off by, let's start with some film. Can you introduce this first clip to kind of get us into the story, and then let's dive into the conversation?
Yes, thank you so much. So Alan Moore, the director of Journey to Utopia, and myself, we have worked together for over 20 years. And for a while, we were looking for a story that had to deal with climate change. And we hadn't really found the right project. So when Alan and his own family decided to make major changes in their own lives, we decided to make a film about it. So Alan reluctantly turned the camera towards himself and his family. It was a very conscious decision from the beginning that we wanted to make a very human and brutally honest film about normal family. I mean, like about all of us who suddenly have this gigantic problem and responsibility looming over the dinner table. So forcing us to make changes, lifestyle, priorities, and so forth. So this is not a film about perfect solutions. Rather, it's a film about not hiding behind or waiting for perfect solutions instead of starting to implement necessary changes right now, but also about acknowledging that it's difficult. So in the beginning, this Danish-Norwegian family of artists lived high in the Norwegian mountains in an idyllic family home. But it is, however, so remote that they have to drive a lot to get around or even commute by air to work all the time. So the family are very remorseful about their own carbon footprint, and they decide to move to Permatopia, which is a sustainable, modern farming collective in Denmark. Ellen originally thought that this film the main conflict of the film would be between his very idealistic wife and his very teenage daughter. However, it quite quickly became apparent that although he was the one who had pushed the most for change, he was also the one for whom it was hardest to change. So this first clip that we are going to see is from the beginning of the film, and it will show a little bit of both the father and daughter character. And it starts in the family home in Norway, and we'll then see the Permatopia plot where the family is supposed to move whenever this farming collective is built. Run the clip, please.
Hvis jeg skal beskrive meg selv, jeg er en typisk nostalgiker. Jeg er skeptisk til alle store forandringer. Ting blir jo som regel bare verre når noe forandrer seg. Og jeg er livredd for de enorme klimaforandringer. Ser at vi må gjøre noe nå. Begynne med oss selv. Men hjertet mitt kommer nok til å henge litt fast her oppe. For dette er på en måte mitt paradis.
Det er så koldt, at man bliver ensom inde i sig. Nej. Ensom, Susanne.
Jeg elsker Ingeborg veldig høyt. For meg var og er hun den store kjærligheten. Selv om vi er meget forskjellige. For eksempel at hun vil ut og redde verden med en gang.
Hvad var det? Den her 4. række, tror jeg. Er det ikke det, Asler?
Det kan godt være. Jeg ved det ikke.
Nej. Jeg tror, der var der det der blå tut på den hvide. Jeg tror faktisk cirka, det er der, vores hus skal ligge. Det er lidt syret at tænke på, ikke? Lige nu er der bare tisler. Men om forhåbentligvis 3/4 år, så skulle der meget gerne ligge et fint hus. Og mange fine huse, faktisk.
Jeg håber virkelig, de får slået væk alt det her. Jeg kan ikke gå her med de her sko, okay? Jeg får panik. Kan vi gå videre? Der er alt for mange planter og sådan noget her.
Thank you so much, Lise, for that. As anyone attending this, if you have the opportunity to catch this movie at the festival, is it still possible to see it being screened, Lise?
Yes.
Amazing. I strongly urge you dive in. Lise, is this the first film that you have made that is climate themed? Should we just say climate themed rather than climate centered?
I wouldn't say so, since I did some years back the film Into Eternity, which is about nuclear waste.
One of my favorite films ever, by the way. Love that film.
But I don't have only a climate agenda. I have more of also a social agenda, I would say. So.
And do you think that, as you reflect on the kind of projects, because I know, directors, filmmakers come to you all the time and you see so many projects through the work that you do, how do you reflect on the kinds of climate stories that you've come across or you've seen? And is any of it changing? I'm curious.
I mean, it's changing just to the extent that you get a lot more focus on that. There is a lot more focus. Before, I mean, when we started, Ellen and I, with this film, we were really looking for good stories, and we didn't really find what I would call stories. But there are many more out there. I'm right now working on another project set in Bosnia. It's called Sky Above Zenica, which is also a pollution story, and it's focused on how you who is enabling it, and how are the structures are so complex that it's very difficult to change things, even though they are obviously wrong.
So you're seeing creative development, you're seeing creative possibilities in terms of storytelling from the community. Is that reflected also in, maybe you can talk a little bit about how sustainability comes into the training, the amazing training that you do as well?
Yes, I mean, in the EAVE, where we train a lot of producers, we try to implement best practices in many different ways, not just about this, but also we have a new green policy, and we're trying to get people we're trying to get everybody who goes through Rave to be agents of change in whatever community they work in. That can also be with regards to film policy, but definitely also in their own practice. And the green policy involves a lot of relatively obvious things that is easy to implement, like traveling more by train than by air if it's feasible at all, buying local products, renting and sharing with other offices rather than always buying new, trying to implement practices that really reduces not just the consumption, but also the transportation and freight of things.
Amazing. And do you also talk about kind of carbon representation on screen? I was reading a really interesting report out of the BBC reflecting on how, and maybe it's sort of potentially less evident in documentary, but particularly in kind of scripted formats, whether that be entertainment or fiction. Actually, it's also about changing our whole paradigm about what is on screen, what is implicitly or explicitly inferred in terms of our kind of high carbon lifestyle.
And we absolutely do that because we really try to make producers consciously choose the subjects they put on screen. We want them to choose stories with purpose. Of course, we don't tell them what to think and feel. That's up to them. But we absolutely want them to make those conscious choices, not just make a film for the sake of making a film, but making a film that they think it's important to put on screen.
Can I switch tack quickly to Jeroen, please, from the perspective of a funder? Again, you're assimilating so many projects. I'm curious, just first of all, what trends you're observing in terms of climate-themed or climate-centered stories coming into the fund. Do you have sort of observations around that?
Well, we don't have a specific funding scheme for that at the moment. So, well, of course, there are a lot of stories that can be related to the topic, of course. What we see is that especially young filmmakers are interested in the topic. For them, it's almost a reality. It's something that will define their future. So I think that's really an incentive and a stimulation for them, stimulus for them to talk about the subject in very different ways. And then from us as a funding institution, it's very interesting because we are between the policymakers, the ministries, the Dutch Ministry for Culture, and the filmmakers in the field, and we want to try to make our funding schemes as practical as possible. So we really want to stimulate action amongst the filmmakers to start to produce in a more sustainable way. In the end, it's them, it's the filmmakers that have to take that decision and take that to take a challenge on board to start producing in a more sustainable way. But yeah, we can suggest tools. We can suggest new ways of implementing sustainable practices on the set. We can also provide funding for new ways of filming, for an eco-manager or an eco-consultant that reflects on the production as a whole and everything that has been thought through and introduced to focus on sustainability. So there are a lot of options for us as well. But I think the most important thing now is action. We all, I think, have to focus on, okay, what can be done in practice and how are we going to do it all together?
And I would love to return to this question, which is how we incentivize, in a way, more film teams, right? To lean in, both in what they're making, the subject of their films, and how they're approaching it, and how they're making. And I'm curious. I would love to hear some of your reflections on that. Can I switch now to Kristýna? you're both hands-on, production manager, but you're also involved in distribution and curation. Could you talk a little bit about how sustainability is showing up in your practice and any of the trends that you're observing?
Yeah, so as a production manager for 3 years now, we are focusing on like how to limit our production of material that can go to waste at the end of the festival, because the festival takes 10 days and then everything that's left, it just goes to waste. So we are trying to print really the least we can print and that we know that we can distribute. It's the same with merchandising. If the people won't buy it afterwards, they'll just buy it during the festival. And also focusing on parties and on catering and so on, and to redistribute the food that is left, cooperating with some non-governmental organizations or social organizations that can use the food for homeless people or something like that. And also focusing on traveling and limiting of travel of hosts, of guests across the world. So we want, when the guest is coming, for example, from Asia to the Czech Republic, we want them to be a part of many events during the festival, not just like come to the opening ceremony and then go back. And we're also focusing more on bringing guests from Europe by train, not by plane, and just thinking beforehand. Now it's very different. During the pandemic, you can't bring guests to your festival because of the disease. Everything is online, but I think it's also important to focus on the carbon footprint of the online world, which like it's not comparable to the flights and to the air travel, but it's also not so ecological. So maybe to the future, do some analysis of this also.
Yeah, that's a super interesting question. Can you you've been working in the festival for a little while now. Can you reflect also on, do you have any observations about shifting or trends in programming around climate themed stories? Again, I'm interested in how it's showing up literally and what the opportunity is for publics to interact with these stories.
So every year we have our festival category, which is focused on ecological topics and environmental change. So it goes a long way back, like for 20 years we are in the business. And last year we had our main festival topic was climate change. I have a poster here. It was some Shakespearean till it snows in June or something like that. So it's a bit. The politicians are saying that we will be working with climate change next year because we don't have time now. So it was like a joke, like yeah, we are waiting until it snows in June. Now we are not making anything now. We are waiting and we are waiting. So we wanted to focus on not waiting, but just doing something right now. So we had in the regions, because the festival goes also in the regions, we were talking about the changes right now in the small cities and around, about not enough rain and about dry land. And so every region was doing very hands-on and a lot of debates on what is going on in their region. So it was really practical thinking, not just waiting for politicians or waiting for some organization to do something for them, but doing by themselves.
Super inspiring. I feel like it's maybe a great segue to go to the second clip from the film. Lise, I don't know what you think. It's a nice segue into it. Will you set it up for us?
I will. So this next clip, which is towards the end of the film, it's after almost 2 years of delay, the family has finally moved into a relatively well-functioning Utopia. But anyone who has lived in any kind of collective know that it's not always easy. And on top of that, they have now had so many financial pressure, so much financial pressure because of the delays in the construction. So it's also become very expensive. So we enter this clip when the parents have been flirting with the idea of moving away because they have been looking at a rental house where they could get almost 3 times the space they have in Permatopia for the same price. And this is where we enter the clip.
Dette minner jo, ikke sant, om gården på den måten.
Det skulle til og med samme farve.
Samme farge på huset til og med. Og det kjempestore gamle eketrær utenfor. Det enorm plass til barna. Enorm plass til oss. Kontor, musikk, klaver, natur, gammel natur. Frukttrær som vokst ut. Eketrær som kanskje 1000 år gamle, jeg vet ikke, men så det klart jeg føler en enorm sånn frihet, plass. Det mange som fantaserer om kanskje å gi opp, men ikke...
Ja, det tror jeg.
Ikke gjør det.
Mange som har tunge stunder, ligesom dig og mig, så væk. Fordi selvom du tror, at det er kun dig, der har det, så har jeg det også. Men som alligevel ikke kan se, hvordan et godt alternativ til at blive med. Det er Permatopia jordbær. De smager godt. Lidt meget sand på. Og pylleæg op og pylde godt længere. Jeg vil bare høre, hvad du tænker, Asler, fordi... Og jeg bare kigger over i det der hus. Jeg har ikke plads til jeres vintertøj, vel? Jeg har ikke plads til vores bøger. Jeg har ikke... Altså... Det er simpelthen så svært at få plads til at være herinde. Og når de så pludselig kommer og siger, at det er det lille bitte lagerrum, vi så får til råd, det sløjfer de også. Så er det bare ligesom om, at der var en eller anden... Kæden hoppede af op i mit hoved. Og så bestilte jeg simpelthen fremvisning af en lejebolig. Kæmpestor lejebolig på 260 kvadratmeter. Hvad tænker du?
Jeg tænker, det er bare sådan lidt løber væk fra problemerne, og det er lidt latterligt.
Ja.
Men bare sådan den der indstillinger. Gå til helvede nu. Vi er alle sammen tabt, og nu flytter alle væk og sådan noget. Hvis en familie begynder at flytte væk og sige, nu gider vi ikke mere, så siger man ligesom, så kommer der nok til at ske noget med de andre familier.
Altså du tænker også, det er illoyalt over for projektet simpelthen?
Ja, hvad med alle de venner, som vi har fået her, og alle de mennesker, som vi nu er bundet til?
Ja.
Så skrider vi bare, og så er det bare sådan her, fuck ja, vi laver vores eget.
Så du tænker, det er at stikke tilpillen godt og grundigt ned i jorden og tage sig sammen og få det bedste ud af det? Ja.
Hvis vi nu pludselig sidder derovre, og sådan om 3 år, så ser det fantastisk ud, og der er alt muligt shit, der er i gang og sådan noget, og det går fint, så sidder man ligesom der. Ja. No.
Så kan man fortryde det valg.
Ups.
Ja.
Nu tror jeg ikke, altså risikoen er lidt for stor, for at vi ikke sidder og ikke irriteret over det resten af livet.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Just reflecting on what Kristýna was describing in terms of local activations around these climate questions. I'm curious, Bassam, can I throw to you? What's your observation in the region? You're based between Dubai and Amman. What are your observations about APEX storytelling, and is it changing?
The thing is, in this region, climate change, it's not something that we talk about, especially in media. As Sir David Attenborough said, we have a communication challenge, but we have a communication problem here in the Middle East. You'll either hear climate change on TV, either when it's about a really far away country, or if it's about the Ministry of Environment doing some local activities. So we don't have we don't talk about how we will cope with climate change, how we will do an action toward the climate change. So I'm happy that there is a young generation that they don't take their information from the available content, available TV. They are looking for creative resources like this documentary, like Netflix documentaries. Recently, Netflix did a huge announcement that they will go net zero next year. Everyone is talking about 10 years, but Netflix decided to go big and go now. Because I think they know they are a trendsetter. They will help move this. They will make people talk more about it all around the world because it's a global network. The problem here was people are distancing themselves from the problem because it's not immediate. It's not something that we're seeing. We're seeing it. The impact is there, but we feel it's not our role. It's the government or as an individual. And the government says, it's a global thing. We cannot do it ourselves alone. So it's always like giving the ball away toward doing it. So in the region here, unfortunately we don't have much encouraging in especially in Jordan. In UAE, they have a climate change ministry. They're doing an annual assessment of the dangers that would oppose the country, and they're working toward that. Food security, adaptation, helping other countries, but it's in one place. It's not across the region. I think there are solutions. There are individuals are doing that, but I'm hopeful with what the next generation will do to help this to become something actionable.
And can you talk a little bit about your sustainability practice too? Because you're not waiting for a next generation. You're out there actively mobilizing and training and reskilling people. So can you share a little bit about what that looks like and the very different constituencies you're working with? Because this isn't just about docs, it's fiction, it's across the industry, please.
Yes. A few years back, as a producer, I was always concerned about the environment and wanted to do content about that. And every time I either cannot find financing or cannot find the right story to tell it so people can get it. A few years later, I heard about Albert in the UK and how they are trying to do the production itself as environmental friendly as it can be by doing best practices. So I kept digging. I found out that it is a global trend that is growing. So I decided, okay, it's my job to do it here. It's something that I can do, something I believe. I co-founded Greener Screen officially in 2017. What we did, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So we took BAFTA's best practices, BAFTA's production training, and we localized it. We adapted to the region so we can start immediately. We started training young filmmakers from around the region, but the impact is still in a closed loop. It's only around the production. It is snowballing around the teams that they are starting adapting some positive stuff, environmental, sustainable practices in their lives, but it wasn't enough. So we decided to do something called Greener Scripts. Our team in Greener Screen developed a full training. It's kind of invasive training. We go in toward the creative process. We don't tiptoe around it. So we work with filmmakers that they want to do environmental content. We work with them to talk about the psychology behind the characters. What is the eco-hero? What is the eco-villain? How we can portray people. We cannot show a villain driving a Tesla. We don't want to link positive behavior with negative behavior. We wanted to set it, but at the same time, giving the space for the creators to be creative around it. We give them the science, we give them the solutions, we give them the tools, and this is your creative tool. You can think using this on your back of your mind. We worked with in both in production and in creative process. Recently, we worked with a project that I really love. It's called Costa Brava, a Lebanese film that was part of the Good Pitch in Arabic, a Doc Society program. And I think it was the first fiction film that has get into the good
the
pitch.
First.
Yeah, so
Incredible.
we worked with Miriam and Munya, the director, the producer, to help them create a best practice specifically for Lebanon. Lebanon has many problems, waste, energy, all kind of problems that you can think of, corruption. It's there, and they wanted to fight it, and they wanted to do an environmental topic with an environmental best practice. So they practice what they preach, and they did a really great job. They managed to work with all departments to reduce their impact: catering, energy, accessories, everything. So they did a full practice, and we couldn't travel to Beirut, and we did the right thing. We did it online, so our footprint was controlled. We trained 2 of their team members to be the eco manager and the impact producer, to understand how they can. They have a really beautiful ideas. We managed to work with them to put it in a systematic way to implement it properly, and they managed to do an amazing job. We're working with them now on a report to announce how they did it, what was the missing opportunities that they can do better next time, and how we can work together to spread this around the region. They have a beautiful film that I'm sure it will tour around festivals, so it will create a buzz about sustainable production in the Middle East. So we're trying to work with trendsetters like regional and local filmmakers, also, and international organizations like BAFTA, Producers Guild of America, private sector like Netflix, because we want this to be popular. We want this to be cool for people to adapt, because sometimes there is no incentive at the moment, as you mentioned, and there is no regulations that force the habit. So we want people to either do it from, at the moment, PR perspective, and do it from environmental obligations. So we're trying to help them to put them on that path, so we can make it snowball and go toward like everyone, from the smallest production to the biggest blockbusters.
Beautiful, Bassam. Thank you. Before I turn to Maria, and we really want to hear how Creative Europe is thinking about this challenge and this opportunity. My God, it's an opportunity. I want to remind the audience, of course, at any point, I want you to be thinking about the questions you have for participants in this. As we start to talk with Maria, we're going to open up into a conversation amongst all the panelists about what is the low-hanging fruit. We can move on. We must move on now. This year, next year, the year after. We don't need permission. We don't need any more evidence. We just need to get to work. And I want to conspire with this incredible group to think about that, and invite you all to take in your suggestions and questions too. With that, Maria, can I turn to you and get some reflections upon you about how Creative Europe is thinking about the greening of the industry, the greening of our screens? How is that showing up? Where are your priorities from a strategic perspective?
I was struck by what Bassam was saying, that in your area you feel that you're not taking the ball, that the ball is in somebody else's court. I feel that with the Green Deal, the Commission, the European Union has taken within her mandate the ball. So this Green Deal that was launched by the von der Leyen Commission last year sets a framework for what Europe wants to do in fighting climate questions and in promoting greening. We have a framework and we have a mandate to comply with the ambitions of the Commission, which are to become the first bloc climate neutral by 2050, and to have 30% of our public expenditures geared to a policy that enhance sustainability and fight climate change. Therefore, this is still nothing compares with the fantastic stories that you're bringing here to this discussion. I always feel that I come with a sort of, in French we say langue de bois, saying that bureaucratic approach in saying what we will be doing and big statements. And then when we come to concrete action, it's always difficult because policy making with 27 member states is not easy and is not immediate as Beadie wants us to act. Yet I see, for example, that Lise was mentioning our training programs that the Creative Europe program has been supporting for ages, I think, is one of our oldest best friends I have. And there you see that in all the small activities with this Green Deal, we're giving some coherence. So whatever the Creative Europe media is doing now is in the context of achieving these goals, in the context of consolidating the ongoing activities and especially supporting the sector in what the sector estimates is the best way to achieve their goals, which are the goals of the Commission now since last year. So there is a common goal, there is a framework, and there is best practices that we're trying to share at all levels. Of course, at level of productions, we have a better grasp. We have the CO2 calculators that have been developed also together with the national funds, Jeroen. So we're very grateful that we can work together on this. We have a variety already of instruments. And again, our role is once again to be there, to create a platform. Our ambition in the short run is to create a platform whereby all these efforts that have been put together by the sector and by the national funds in the last, I would say, 10 years, get together, are exchanged, and can be used by the entire audiovisual sector. Again, this to me is the low-hanging fruit, that we can understand and share practices and keep the greening on the top of the agenda of the media program, but especially of all the policy making and support whatever the sector is doing at the level of production. But our ambition is to expand it throughout the whole value chain of the audiovisual. And I'm very happy also about what Kristýna was mentioning, the way festivals are operating, because we need to also insert an awareness on our impact in the climate agenda, also in the practices that the sector has in terms of business practices. I'm also, of course, thinking about the practices in terms of consuming or disseminating audiovisual works. Again, this pandemic has given us the possibility of really fully exploiting the opportunities of the online. We yet have to think about the CO2 impact of this online dissemination, and this is again something that we want to look at. And of course, again, and I'm finishing, there is another dimension that is sharing of practices, but also sharing of data, and some sort of understanding of how the sector impact can be measured would be also a way to raise awareness and in a concrete way, to really understand how our work is measurable and how we can, in Europe, create an harmonization of our practices also at the level of dissemination. Therefore, the big question with the online dimension. And again, there are some more active non-European international actors that have, as Bassam was saying, a very important role in terms of trendsetter. But we want Europe to become a trendsetter on this. Thank you.
I love that. We want Europe to become a trendsetter. Come on. That's the best news ever for all of us in this room. You know, we're not starting with a blank sheet of paper. I mean, people have been working on this for years, just listening to the people in this room and their practices. We are not starting from zero. I wonder, can we just do a kind of rapid fire around this group to hear some of the resources or trainings or practices that you have encountered that you think are brilliant, that you would want to share with the wider community who are listening to this conversation? Who wants to jump in? And it can be your own projects, by the way. Don't be shy. If you think you've got the world-class trend-setting project, I want to hear about it. Can I throw? Come on, Bassam.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned earlier, that BAFTA is doing amazing training, and with COVID now, they're doing an online version of that. They have a sustainable production training that you can attend from anywhere from the world, and they have something called Planet Placement, which is like 101 of what kind of content you can integrate environmental topics with. Also in North America, I think there is Green Spark Group does some trainings online. And in the Middle East, you can check Greener Screen website. We're doing trainings now in Jordan. We have upcoming 12 trainings to work with filmmakers on sustainable production and working with them to create a local resources that has vendors and has solutions to make their life easier. Because if the resources are available but we don't know about it, we cannot use them. So we wanted to create a one place for everyone and help them to, okay, this is your impact, this is how you can do it, and this is the best practices that you can do without cost. Sometimes it doesn't cost anything, and sometimes you can save money by adapting best practices.
Incredible. There's a bounty. I wonder whether the team, the festival team, can capture some of these links, and maybe we can reshare them around onto the website afterwards. Lise, can I turn to you?
Yes, I think I wanted to say that one of the things that we do also when we produce films, you have to always question, why are you doing it this way? Why this story? Why is this the right? I think if I can say that as a way of changing your own ways, whether privately or professionally, I think the question why is the most important one. And it's also the most difficult one to remember to ask, because if you have a practice and you've had it for many years, you tend to just keep on doing it. But if you have put a big fat why on the wall and you force yourself to question at least one of your habits or practices every week, and if you find that it's not sustainable, then you get the next 4 weeks to change it, because it takes a while to change a habit, but it's possible. And that's one of the good effects of COVID, among the many other not so good effects, is that we actually learned that we can change the way we live, right? So I think this practice of really looking at what you do and questioning it and changing it, implementing one change at a time, and in a few months, you will actually have changed quite a lot. And I think that is something that's very easy to do for most people. Of course, EFE teaches you much more than this and on a much broader level. So for a fuller change, full of before and after, I can recommend doing something like that. And I also have something, but I guess that's for later, for the industry ideas or what.
Okay. Anyone else want to jump in with things that they love? Jeroen?
If I may add one thing.
Please.
Doc Society Climate Story Fund. Yeah, I think it's a great project. People should know more about.
Okay, you're very sweet. Thank you. Jeroen.
Yes, well, we are currently looking at the different tools and instruments that are already available within Europe. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. And I think what Maria said, that the alignment of green film initiatives within Europe is extremely important. So coordination and exchange of ideas is extremely important. And we are currently looking at a tool that was developed by the Trentino film commission that then was developed further through Cineregio. And I understood that last week the Ministry of Environment and Culture in Italy is even considering the tool to become like a national framework for the film industry in Italy. It's a certification tool. Film producers can use this tool and see based on 6 criteria how they can make their film production more sustainable, eco-friendly, and then if they implement their production based on these criteria, at the end they get a certification, which of course is a huge asset for the film and for the producer, and also a lot of lessons can be learned from the process. So I think that's a very interesting tool which we are definitely considering as well.
Beautiful. I want people to hold other suggestions and let's pepper them in to this final bit of the discussion. I just want to turn us practically into what we think. Where can we move fast together now? You know, I think it's safe to say it's an incredible to be, working in a creative community, with the framework, with the positive and encouragement of the framework being provided by EU Media. I really feel it's now beholden upon us to think about how we can take fullest advantage and go furthest within that strategic framework. I'm curious, amongst this group, where do you see the low-hanging fruit in terms of, whether it's around, new resources, whether it's around new agreements we need to make together, whether it's about a coalition of practice? Do people have ideas about where we should move now and move quickly?
Yeah.
Come on, Bassam.
Okay.
A man full of ideas.
Well, I've been working with global industry practitioners from all around the world for the past 6 months, and we're trying to find a way how we can do a global framework. We can help productions to move from country to another easily, smoothly, with their best practices, environmental best practices, without thinking of, it will be harder to film in the US, then move to the UK and come to Jordan, filming with the same plan. But now we're trying to find a way to incentivize first, second, to find a global framework with local actions, because each region has its own special way to do the things and availability of resources. So we're trying to find a global framework with local actions. I think creating incentives from countries, from film commissions, would help push that toward real action. But I think the main thing we need to plug in our information, our data together. Like BAFTA has their calculator, Creative Europe has their own calculator, Producers Guild of America has their own calculator, Netflix will build their own calculator. But we need to have some sort of a global framework that we can share this data, this knowledge for the filmmakers, for the audience, for the people, so we can take an informed decisions in the future of, this is where our problem is, this is how we can solve this solution. And there will be less challenges, and we can be an environmental friendly industry with net zero faster than we are expecting.
Bassam, if people who are listening to this conversation want to connect with you on that, will you make sure, can we find a way to be able to connect people to you? Because I bet there are people in the room who want to take you up on that and find out more. Maria, I saw your hand up.
But Lisa was before me.
Oh, go on. Okay. You're so fair. Come.
No, I'm saying that I think that what you mentioned to create a common practices that are harmonized and not competing or even discrediting each other. I think that is what from the Commission this would be our first goal. And Jeroen was very clear. We have very good examples in Europe. From Italy, we have it from Flanders. We need to work together and to set a common tool firstly. And second, as Bassam was saying, our goal is to incentivize the use of these tools and tied to the selection of the projects that we have at Creative Europe Media. So not a burden, but an incentive. And progressively, when the sector is ready, when this pandemic and recovery and terrible times are over, trying to progressively make it really a prerequisite. So really create a tool and progressively move to the use of these tools in all of our support schemes, being it at development, being it for TV, distribution, for festivals, for markets, and for all the support schemes we have at Europe.
Your thinking is aligned with the audience. We have an audience member, I think they're called Al, who said, how about making green criteria to be integrated in all financing schemes of the film industry? And I guess your point is we may be moving there.
Yes, we have already in the next program that with a bit of luck is going to be finalized in the next months. You will see that greening is part of the award criteria.
Beautiful. Lise.
Yes, I wanted to mention that I think I agree with everything that's been said, but I think it's important to look at also changing the way we look at, for instance, co-production, because a lot of co-production incentivizes more travel, for instance, because there are spend requirements and everything else. And we can change how we look. I think that the creative cooperation across borders is extremely important, and also the financial for a lot of smaller countries. But we have to look at that differently so that we are not pushing things that will actually have a negative effect on greening. That's one thing. Another thing that's a political thing, is we could really push for better trains in Europe, for better platforms where you could find out how you travel by train to this, there, and the other place, and where it wouldn't cost twice as much or 3 times as much as flying. But what I wanted to really say is that I think that films are incredibly important when it comes to inspiring people and inspiring dialogue, especially when you do community outreach, when you do all kinds of things with a film, where you go out and meet people, you have talk, or you let other people take the film and use it in their own debate. This could be incentivized so much more. We still have a distribution system which is preventing the films from being used as much as they could. It's also a financial thing, and it's a cost for the distributors and the cinemas and so forth. So it's not easy, but it can be done, and it should be done, because I think that it just in the meeting, in the creation of community, that we really change things.
I think that's a fascinating point. I think, and certainly, COVID is challenging all of our classical distribution assumptions anyway. So this is a very important and useful moment to be then reframing that question through a green lens, if you will. Kristýna, did you want to jump in with what you would like to see, what you'd like to advocate for, where you think our low-hanging fruit is?
Yeah, well, I was thinking about what Lisa said about it's important to travel with a film and focus on what the film is saying. And we were thinking about the question, if you should you prefer to bring the director from Australia to the Czech Republic and travel with him, and he will have a lot of things to say to the people around and make a lot of impact, but your impact on the environment would be maybe bigger, maybe than the impact on the people because of the airplane travel. So maybe it's not about just doing things, but thinking also the balance between the impact of the films and the impact of your own acting. So
important. It's 2:00 now, and I think I'm about to get a voice in my left ear. I need to wrap things up. I want to make a plea for more. I think the most direct incentive we can talk about is more money for climate-centered storytelling. I mean, specifically, Doc Society is just putting together now what we hope will be a kind of multi-year fund, climate story fund. It is global. However much money we raise, it's not going to be enough, and we're one small foundation, one small nonprofit. And I would urge, the funders and the commissioners and listening to this conversation to think about the audacity of simply putting your money where your mouth is too. We need to incentivize more people to get trained, to start thinking about their practice, what the stories they're telling on screen, how they're making the work. They're going to need more money to do it, and so there's a confidence trick there. And I would love those funders to think strongly about that, a message that's as clear as that. There will be more resources, that there should be more resources for people who are prioritizing climate themed storytelling and all of the training and attendant practice around it. Movies That Matter team, is it all right if I give each of the participants one last thought to offer the audience to take away? Yeah, I'm getting the thumbs up. Come on, one whip round. What would you like as a takeaway to give people in terms of, and let's pose this positively, enthusiastically. We have open doors, populations who want the content, an industry that wants to lean in and solve this. What is the take home that you'd like to give everybody? Bassam, can I start with you?
I would love to come next year to the same festival, talking about our solutions that we manage, and hopefully at least 2 or 3 of us collaborating on a global scale, a project that can spread solutions and spread knowledge through borders. This is, I think, the best thing that we can do is collaborating, working together to find solutions and make it easier for filmmakers to adapt and become the norm of doing film in the future.
Beautiful. Jeroen.
Yeah, I think Maria already referred to that. I think we should really frame it as an incentive. I think the sustainability and the eco-friendliness has always had this idea of expensive, of difficult, etc. But it's not. I mean, it can be an incentive to innovate. It can be an incentive to create new stories. It can be, it can be very positive. It can be cheaper also. So I think framing it as something positive and as an incentive for the future is for me really the key and very important.
Beautiful. Lise.
Yes, I think the most important thing is really to reach out and realize that it's not you and the others, it's really us, and to allow for that kind of thinking, both in the way you work every day, but also in the way you allow people to hear your solutions, get inspired by other people, get smarter, because we will be doing things that turns out not to be the right things, even though we had good intentions. So you have to sort of keep on getting smarter and allowing for this exchange, and for that to be easy. So we also don't have to fight to find the platforms. That would be fantastic.
Brilliant. And Kristýna?
Yeah, I think I lost my signal a bit.
You're back. We've got you. We're happy to see you.
I would love to see next year for our festival happening in March. We were always organizing festivals meet festivals with focus on eco-friendly and green festivals. So I would love to be able to do it again and to bring people together and talk about what were their steps, what were they doing for the last 2 years when we were meeting last. And we also made some kind of guidelines how to make your festival practically environmental friendly. So I can share also that with you.
That would be incredible to have that and share it amongst this group and this audience. We would appreciate that so much. Last word to you, Maria.
It was an honor. Thank you, Beadie. Well, I hope that next year we'll come back here at Movies That Matter with many, many other actors that have used the incentives that us as policymakers have made available this year with the new Creative Europe program, but also with the funds, with the new stories on how they have dealt their business, how they have produced, and new documentaries, of course, because as you pointed out, the role of good stories in creating awareness is the best instrument that the audiovisual sector has, and this is to the benefit of the entire community, of other policies, and of all the European societies. So I hope that this approach of incentive to produce change and to consolidate change will bring the effects that we in Europe have pointed out as our major ambition, so that we can all be trendsetters.
Well, we thank you. Thank you, Maria, Bassam, Lise, Jeroen, Kristýna. Thank you so much for your time today, for your expertise, for your ideas. Thank you to the whole festival team for hosting us, and to the audience for joining us. Let's do this again this time next year, as everyone said, and come back with our stories, our challenges, but also our triumphs. And until then, stay well. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.